Chapter 4. St. Farr was a tight-knit community. Sure, there were cliques and rivalries that lasted generations, but when push came to shove, everyone in town would reach out a helping hand toward those who were in need. The monthly community events played a big part in both developing those cliques and forcing the face-to-face interaction required to foster the empathy each St. Farrian felt for one another. The lack of entertainment options in the area meant each community event was attended by everyone in town. Most often, the community event was a barbecue in St. Farr City Park. Once per month, the most outgoing business owners in St. Farr would haul their personal grills and smoker to the park and start preparing a feast of mostly meat for everyone in the community. Harvey would close Harvey's Cafe early, Brett would leave his wife and children to tend Wells Co., and Dale would turn off his neon open sign in the middle of the day so they could perform their unofficial duties as town grill masters. By 5 p.m., the entire town would smell of smoke from charcoal and post oak. That's when St. Farrians from all over the town would descend upon the park with rumbling tummies and a mind full of gossip. Pat had been promoting the community barbecue during her live broadcast throughout the day. She wanted to make sure everyone within reach of her radio signal came to this very special edition of the monthly community event. This, she decided, was when she was going to break the news of KOBO closing its door and shutting down the broadcast. At precisely 4:59 p.m., Pat turned on the KOBO mic for what she knew would be the last time. She inched close, touching the mic guard with her lips. "Well, folks," she began with a listless sorrow in her voice, "it's just about quitting time. Make sure you make your way down to St. Farr City Park for the community barbecue. You do not want to miss Harvey's famous burgers and dogs. Also, I've been told Brett and Dale have been teaming up all day to smoke a brisket and ribs, making this a true Texas affair." She paused, letting her message saturate the airwaves. Every good storyteller knows that you need to leave room for the story to continue, so she added a little intrigue to her final sign-off. "You also aren't going to want to miss the big surprise that could shake up the entire town. I'll see you there." Finally, she ended the broadcast in the same way she had every day for decades. "This is Patty Biederman, signing off." Pat turned off the mic, turned on the playlist, and headed out the front door to make a short walk across the street to the park. When she arrived, she was surprised to see most of the town was already there. The sounds of "Crazy" by Britney Spears played quietly from small speakers placed along the roofline of the buildings, creating the town square. KOBO was constantly peeking out of the town's sound system, underscoring every action in downtown with a heavy early 2000s sheen. "Crazy" meant it was quitting time. Everyone in St. Farr knew that. The children in the park were all crowded around the small swing set, taking turns trying to make a full rotation around the top bar. Legend has it, when Harvey was a child, he was able to swing so high and with so much force that he not only looped around the bar in a full 360-degree rotation, but he kept going and chained himself to the top bar. The volunteer fire department even had to come and cut him down. The adults were broken into several groups, some at the gazebo, some standing near the grills, some already claiming their usual spots at the picnic tables. Pat even noticed there were more people who she recognized as living in homes that dotted the outskirts. She smiled. It made her happy to see those people who rarely made their way into town come and participate in community events. She genuinely loved building a sense of belonging in St. Farr, so seeing evidence of her progress filled her with pride. "Food's ready!" The kids rushed over to the cement pad, formed a somewhat orderly line at the plastic table filled with white paper plates, buns, and plastic utensils. The adults moved a bit slower, but eventually joined the single file line. Pat joined the end of the line and started a casual conversation with May, who owned Wells Co. with her husband Brett, the brisket king of St. Farr. "Pat!" May exclaimed, giving Pat a big hug. "I'm so happy you made it. I heard your show today. So sad about that horse." Pat took a moment to realize May was talking about one of the news stories that she had shared earlier in the day. "Oh, yes, it is sad, isn't it? The farmer had to buy a new horse and a new chipper. That's going to cost the whole season's earnings, poor guy." May kept an exaggerated look of concern on her face for another second, then let out a sigh. "Well," May started again, "how are you?" "I'm okay. It's kind of a big day." "Oh, is it?" May asked, genuinely interested. Yeah, I'll tell you about it later. The two of them had been moving forward as the line progressed toward the meat cookers. Pat grabbed a paper plate, napkin, and a hamburger bun from the folding table to her right and continued to march toward her dinner. Harvey was facing the grill and asked without looking, "Burger or dog?" "Burger, please, Harvey," Pat replied. "Hey, Pat," Harvey said with a smile on his voice. "One burger coming up." Harvey reached his well-known spatula into the upper rack and picked out one of the less charred patties resting in the smoke. "Here you go, Pat," he said, sliding the patty from the spatula onto Pat's waiting bun. "Have a good one." "You too," Pat replied, while taking a few steps forward until her toes met Dale's rhinestone-covered goatskin boots. In front of her, May tapped her husband Brett on the shoulder. Brett turned around with a polite, "Yes, ma'am." Then, seeing it was his wife, Brett set down his tongs and gave her a warm embrace and a quick kiss. Pat's voyeurism was interrupted by an embrace from Dale. "Pat!" The big man's voice boomed as he wrapped his extra-large 6-foot arms around Pat's small body. Pat and Dale were the same age, and they had both grown up in St. Farr alongside one another. Both were what the rest of the community considered odd ducks. While Pat would often show up to school a few hours late, covered in dust and mud, Dale would often arrive early, immaculately well-kept clothes that he himself had designed and hand-sewed. The two were opposites, but they were both far enough off the spectrum of normal that they wrapped around to meet again. "Hey, Dale," Pat hugged him back. "You've moved up to brisket this month, huh?" Dale always brought his grill to the park and helped out in the cooking process where he could. He may not have had any skills or intuition in the world of food, but an extra set of hands was always nice to have around. Also, he enjoyed talking shop and catching up with Brett and Harvey, as all three of the men owned small businesses in the town square. "Yeah," Dale replied. "Give it a try. Let me know how it turned out." Dale used a set of dented metal tongs to grab a few slices of brisket for Pat. "You like moist, right?" "Moist or nothing," Pat replied. Dale piled the slices of fatty beef next to Pat's hamburger. "Thanks," Pat said. She continued to the second folding table that housed condiments, tomatoes, pickles, lettuce, cups, and a large cooler of ice water. After dressing up her burger, she found a seat at one of the picnic tables next to Miss Melton. "Pat, how are you?" the ancient woman asked as Pat sat next to her. Miss Melton was the school teacher in St. Farr, the only school teacher. Currently, she managed to teach all the children in town using 3 classrooms in the old schoolhouse. Parents didn't really understand how she managed to keep all the children happy, orderly, and learning, but they couldn't believe that she was still doing it after all these years. Everyone in St. Farr remembered having Miss Melton as their teacher. In fact, there was not a single person who attended school in St. Farr that Miss Melton wasn't in her class. She was truly an amazing cornerstone of the community. "I'm good, Miss Melton," Pat replied. "How are you?" "I'm good as I've ever been," Miss Melton replied, keeping up the tradition of pleasant small talk with those who you sat next to at the community barbecue. Once the line of food had mostly dissipated, it seemed like nearly all of St. Farr was munching on grilled dogs and excellent brisket. Pat walked up to the 6-foot-tall Ferris statue in the middle of the park. She cleared her voice, took a deep breath, and spoke loudly. "Excuse me." Some of the people near her turned around, thinking that she was talking to them. Not enough of them had turned, though. She wanted the town's undivided attention. "Excuse me," she said a bit louder. Still not enough of a response. The gazebo had heard and turned towards her, but those at the picnic tables and cement pad were still engaged in their conversations. "Hey, everyone!" Lucky Manning, May's 16-year-old son, yelled out. "Pat wants to say something." "Thanks," Pat whispered, giving Lucky a wink. "Yeah, I wanted to make an announcement," Pat started. "The funding for KOBO has run out. I'm going to need to close the radio station and cease broadcasting tonight." Perfect delivery, Pat thought. Calm, in control, giving all the necessary information with no room for misinterpretation. She gave the reason, hoping that would cut down on the gossip around the closure. And as reality hit of the announcement she had just made, a wave of sadness rushed over her whole body. She felt weak and began walking back to her seat near Miss Melton. She had expected some kind of reaction from the community to the news, maybe some "oh no's" or "what will we do without KBO or KOBOs?" But none came. The barbecue continued on as if the announcement was never made. "Crazy for This Girl" by Evan and Jaron quietly played on the town's sound system, giving an upbeat backdrop to the announcement. Did anyone even care about the radio station? "It's all right, dear," Miss Melton said as Pat approached. "You've done great service for this community for many years. They may not express it, but I'm sure everyone will miss KOBO." Miss Melton was always so supportive. That's part of the reason why everyone in town loved her unconditionally. Pat knew the town didn't particularly enjoy KOBO, but she hadn't realized that most St. Farians were completely indifferent to its closure. She ate her brisket in silence, knowing that once she turned off the playlist later that night, the radio station she had spent her whole career building would soon fade into the history of St. Farr.